All right, let's work some examples here. Example 1 says find the additive inverse of each of the following integers. Write the answer in the simplest form. Okay, so we have, first of all, we have the number 2. So the additive inverse, another word for that would be the opposite. So what would be the opposite of 2? That would be negative 2. And if you were to add those together, you would end up with 0, which is another way of saying the additive inverse. Okay, what if we had the letter M? That means it could be any number. So the opposite of any number would be the negative of that number. So it would be negative M. This one might be a little bit more tricky. We're asking what is the opposite of any number? Well, the opposite of any number would be the positive of it. So um, the opposite of a negative number, I guess I should say, that's probably a better way of saying that, would be the positive of it. And here we actually have a number, which will be a little bit easier for us to see. This is asking us for us to find the opposite of negative 6. So the opposite of negative 6 will be a positive 6. Now we also have 0 here. And 0 being right smack dab in the middle of the number line, it doesn't really have an opposite because, well, 0 is not positive and it's not negative. It's like Switzerland, it's neutral. So the opposite of 0 is just 0. We don't ever talk about 0 being positive or negative. In fact, 0 is technically called a non-negative number. They can't call it positive, so they call it non-negative. That means it's not negative, but they don't say it's positive. So it's kind of a little bit of weird vocabulary there that kind of gets them out of trouble. Then we have A plus B. Well, if I'm looking for the opposite of that, or the additive inverse, the opposite of A would be, oops, not a tilde, but a negative A, and the opposite of a positive B would be a minus B. Let's go ahead and do example 2 since that was pretty short. Example 2 says simplify the following expressions. Okay, so this is asking us, and remember when we have when we talk about math, order of operations always rules the world. So anytime you see parentheses or grouping symbols or anything like that, you do have to ask yourself first, is there anything for me to do inside there? Because those parentheses and grouping symbols mean, do me first. So here we have a parenthesis around this negative 2. Well, there's really nothing to do inside there. So now we can move out and say, okay, this says the negative of negative 2. Or another way of looking at it is the opposite of negative 2, which would be a positive 2. And then likewise, the M just represents any number. So the opposite of a negative number is going to be that positive number. Okay, let's go ahead and let's do example 3 while we're here because this has been pretty short so far. So this says evaluate each of the following expressions. So these are all dealing with absolute values. You can see those bars there around the numbers mean absolute value. So keep in mind, what does absolute value mean? It literally means distance from 0. So part A here says the absolute value of negative 5. So this is actually asking you how far from 0 is negative 5. And that would be 5 units. All right, now here again, and actually absolute value bars act like grouping symbols. So if you see an absolute value bar, you can treat it, I say treat it like a parenthesis. That's not the best way of putting it, but or braces or anything like that. It means do me first. So this says the absolute value of -5 is what we need to do first. Well, that literally again says that how far from 0 is -5, and that would be 5 units. But we still have to take care of the negative that's on the outside. So that says the opposite of all of that. So the opposite of 5 would be -5. It's not because you're doing a negative negative. That's not why, that's not what's going on. You have to do the absolute value first and then take the opposite of that number. Alright, so now here we have the negative or the opposite of the absolute value of 5. So we do the absolute value first. How far from 0 is 5? And again, that would be 5 units. But then we still have to worry about that negative on the outside. This says the opposite of that. So the opposite of 5 would be -5.